Well, hello and welcome to this week's edition of Sarah Says. I am super delighted to be with you, and I just want to remind you that this is a 12-part series that is essentially designed to help you retake your personal power. And I believe fully and completely that over the course of time, just as individuals, we give up all of our power, and we think that we can't influence anything, that the things that happen to us are out of our control, which by and large they are, but we also attract things. We also energetically create situations. We, by our words and deeds, put ourselves in situations that we could be more powerful in, or that we could avoid completely if we retake our personal power earlier. And so I encourage you to go back and watch the videos you may have missed. This is video number 7. The gist of today's video is retaking your personal power in regard to words mean things. And I just want to start off by saying that we live in a really volatile time right now. People are hate mongering about politics, hate mongering about the world in general, hate mongering about too much. And I want to encourage you, no matter which political party you prefer, no matter what your religious beliefs are, no matter whether you are engaged on Facebook, Twitter, whatever. What I want you to do is to make a choice today that you are going to use your words as a powerful tool to help, to heal, to comfort, to clarify, to administer passion. I cannot say more clearly that there are people that are hurting, and in many cases they're hurting because of what we're saying. And labels limit, and by entering into conversations, whether in person or digitally, where you begin your conversation labeling, you are limiting the impact and effectiveness of the conversation, as well as limiting your ability to be a superpower for good. Again, I'm not here to have a debate about anything political, religious, or otherwise. What I'm here to have you do is to join me today in a thoughtful dialogue. You're welcome to comment. A thoughtful dialogue, or at least a thoughtful journey through how are you using your words. So we're going to begin. This is a workshop format. You can find out more about me by visiting my website, which is just sarahzinc.com. I'm engaged in a lot of philanthropic things. I have a nonprofit called Sarah's Bag Ladies. We convert grocery bags into mats for the homeless and for animal shelters. I also have a project in Africa where I'm helping a young man, and have been for 5 years, to change his community by starting a ecologically sound cashew farm. And it is a very exciting program. I also do other things. I'm a corporate coach, consultant. I'm a master life coach, and I am a quilter. I repair and restore vintage quilts and make scrappy quilts. All of that to say, I'm trying to live my life the fullest and most complete that I can, and I want you to as well. We don't have to live in a small box. We don't have to be miserable. There is a glorious world out there, and the universe wants us to be happy and healthy, and we need to redefine what that is. And so let me get this party started. All right, here we go. I am giving you the disclaimer that I am not a medical doctor. I am not a therapist, counselor, psychologist, or psychiatrist. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a master life coach. I have some niche certifications in emotional intelligence, goal, success, a whole bunch of them. I would be delighted to visit with you about that. I learned how to do angel card readings from a delightful woman who I believe is watching the show today, Tony DeMaio, spiritual coach, my personal spiritual coach. If you're looking for that sort of coaching, I highly recommend her. I also want to tell you that there are a lot of professionals out there, and if you are under the care of a professional, a licensed professional, you take medication, you're going to therapy, you're doing any other activities or taking any medications or supplements that you've been directed to, please do not stop, start, change, alter your protocols right now based on anything that we say here on the show. You must consult with your professional first. Anything I say here today is just my opinion, and that's all it's good for. So today is about words mean things, and I want you to become accountable for what comes out of your mouth. There is a lot of talk about we all need to be responsible, and we need to, live in a world where we take responsibility for our actions. And, all too often that only applies to other people. I want you to take responsibility for your actions. But if you misunderstand something I said, well, that's not my fault. That's your problem. But the reality is by giving up the understanding to you. I mean, I can say things, but I can't understand them for you, of course. But I can choose to help you understand what I'm saying, and I can choose to acknowledge and understand what you're saying. So I think in order for the world to change, we have to change. It isn't about me changing you, it's about me changing myself. And I think when you change your perspective about, well, the world's so crazy and nobody seems to understand, well, what role are you playing in that? What sort of part do you have in the madness of what's going on right now? And as I scroll through Facebook, way too much madness in terms of how we're communicating. And so today's about you being accountable for your message. And I'm not going to argue the point that communication is a fragile thing, that I could say something clearly in my opinion, you may hear something different. But what happens next? That's what matters. What happens next? We can't throw a message over the wall and then abandon it and say, well, I tried, or they just didn't understand. We know that can happen, but I believe that we have to make a better effort to communicate clearly in all cases. So I'm going to cover a lot of cases today. So the first thing is, this little thing has got to go away, that, I'm responsible for what I say, but if you misunderstood me, it's your fault. Yeah, no, because I want you to think about this. You have a message. You have something you want to say. You choose the words. You put them together in a sentence. You choose how you're going to deliver that sentence. You're going to email it. You're going to post it on Facebook. You're going to write a letter. You're going to send a text. However you choose, right? So if that message gets delivered and someone misunderstands, the first thing you've got to say is, okay, how could I have delivered that differently so it could have been more clear? Because I see it happen way too much, where, well, that's not what I meant, and it's your fault, you misunderstood. Now, look, I know we live in a world where someone can say something and this little sentence gets taken out of context. Well, okay, that's not what I'm talking about, because it's on us to find out what the context was instead of just taking it at face value. I'm talking about when you're having a conversation and you say something and someone misunderstands it and you say, well, it's not my fault, you misunderstood me. Bullshit. It is your responsibility. And I need you to just stop for a moment and realize how much personal power you're giving up when you say, I'm not responsible for you understanding. No, you're not responsible for them understanding, but you are responsible for communicating in such a way that they get what you're saying, right? Okay. So here's where we're going to start. I'm a huge believer in having a practice of mindfulness. There is a series in the great courses called, it's a mindfulness series, and I wish I would have had the book over here, and I do. Okay, this series, okay, it's called Practicing Mindfulness, an Introduction to Meditation, and it's Professor Mark Musi. You need to get this. If you have not done this, you need to do this. It's a 2 CD set. Mindfulness requires us to exert energy. It's easy to live mindlessly. We're like little amoebas in a petri dish, and something pokes us and something pokes us and something pokes us, and we react, and we take no ownership. And then we wonder why our life is crazy, or that we feel a certain way, or that nothing's going the way that we want, when the reality is we're living this mindless life. And so in regard to communication, I want you to begin to think about how you're communicating. Are you communicating intentionally, or are you communicating accidentally? Is it instinct? Is it just a reaction? Is it just knee-jerking? So there's two questions, and we're going to talk about these two questions in regard to many things today. The first thing is, what's your point? I do a lot of lurking on social media because I learn a lot. And as I lurk, I'm realizing that a lot of people their point is just to argue. I believe that with all my soul. So when you're entering into any conversation, I want you to start thinking about, what's your point? And the second question is, what's your need? So let's just use an example of you're entering into just a friendly conversation with a friend. We're just having a conversation. So what's the point? The point is connection. The point is, I want to communicate and connect with this friend of mine. What's your need? My need is I want to be soothed. I want to be comforted. I want to be helpful. I want to be, supportive. Every conversation you enter into, I want you to start asking these two questions. What's the point? What is your point of entering into this conversation? I think too many times we're just blurting, puking words onto people. We have this need to be heard, but we don't have a need. We're not balancing it with a need to hear. We just want to say. We have all this angst that we want to puke up on people. And that is mindless communication. It is pointless, and it can lead to hurting. It can lead to using your words as a weapon. It can lead to many things that I don't really think you wake up in the morning saying, I want to hurt someone today. I want to be hateful today. And I want to tell you something that I want you to think about very seriously. We are living in a time where people are hurting without your help. People don't need you to hurt them. It's a batshit crazy time right now. And so you have the power to withhold hurtful words, which is helpful. You have the power to say helpful things, or to at least engage in civil discussion, in person or digitally, in ways that don't hurt. So keep asking, what's the point of this conversation, and what is my need? The second thing is, I want you to recognize that your words have the power to help, or your words have the power to hurt or the power to heal. And so when you enter into a conversation, again, are you looking to hurt someone? Are you looking to get back? Are you looking for revenge? Are you looking to exert power over someone? Or are you really, truly wanting to help? So here's the question again. When you're engaged in a conversation, what's your point? I see too often that we're engaging in conversations to talk. We just want to talk. Just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And it's a need. So that's your need. But what's your point? And what does the other person get out of this conversation? When you're engaged in a conversation, you have the power to help, the power to hurt, the power to heal. How are you using those words? And I'm going to give you some very solid examples of how you can refine your words, but I want you to keep asking yourself, how am I using my words? There's a joke when little kids are making noises and pointing at things, and adults say, use your words. But as we get older, we tend to fall into some habits and traps of saying the same things over and over again, regurgitating maybe what we've read on social media, saying things that have been said to us that hurt us, and so we're going to say them to someone else. What is your point and what is your need? I want to remind you that words can be tools or words can be weapons. When we engage in conversations with people, I can accelerate the conversation in a positive way, or I can accelerate a conversation in a negative way. And the words that I choose can either be tools to gain understanding or clarity or acceptance of if differing point of views, or words can be weapons. And it doesn't matter if it's an in-person conversation, if it's email, it doesn't matter if it's social media, which is on all of our minds, I think, right now, because that's how so many people are connecting as we are sheltering in place, many of us. What's your point? What is your point of every conversation? Is your point just to assert yourself? Is your point just to make sure that person knows what you know and that you're valuable, and that person knows that you know more than they do? What's your need? Is your need to be understood, or is your need to understand? Is your need to make that person see your point of view, or is your need to understand why they have their point of view? As we enter into a conversation and we can use our words, when we find that our conversations are stunted or combative, I think that's the point where we actually have to say, how am I using my words? What's the point? What is my need here? I want to give you an example. Years ago, when I was very emotionally immature, I distinctly remember a day where I was grumpy and something went wrong, and I couldn't wait to call this customer service because my need was, I said, today's a perfect day. I'm going to give them a piece of my mind. Now, I want you to think about that. My need was just to take out on someone how grumpy I was. And it was a perfectly good day for something to have gone wrong because I was going to call them and give them a piece of my mind. Didn't even take into consideration what went wrong, why it went wrong, the fact that the person at the other end of the phone had nothing to do with what went wrong. How many conversations do you get into where your need has nothing to do with the conversation? Your need is to just lash out. And your words that you choose and the order that you put them in are intended from the get-go to be hurtful. What's the point of that conversation? Is to get satisfaction to hurt somebody, or to assert your power, or to use your words as a weapon so that you can get back at the world. What's your need? Your need is to have revenge. Your need is to be aggressive. Your need is to vent. How is it retaking your power when you aren't controlling what you're saying? You're not exerting your power. You are subject to the whims of your emotions. So, first tip, when we're having these conversations with anybody, I want you to begin to acknowledge what they say. It doesn't mean you agree with them. It means that you acknowledge what they say. You want to be heard. Words mean things. If you want to start having some more successful conversations, I want you to say, I can see how you could believe that, not in a hateful way. You know what? I see the logic that you're using. I say this often when I'm having difficult conversations. I adore having civil debate on my Facebook page. Love, love, love having conversations about difficult topics because we all learn, we all share our ideas. But the first step to that is acknowledging what other people are saying. Your words mean things. And so when someone says something that you disagree with, you're listening to respond and to disagree with them and to tell them why they're wrong. But what if you listened so that you could understand what they're saying and you are able to use your words to say, wow, I hadn't thought of it that way. I don't know that I agree with you, but I can see your point of view. I acknowledge that you have a chain of logic that you've used to get there. I think too many times we think if we acknowledge what someone says that we're putting a stamp of approval on it. That's not what's happening. You're simply acknowledging the other person's point of view, their chain of logic to get there, the reason that they may believe what they believe. It isn't agreeing with what they're saying. The second thing I want to share with you is, are you asking the right questions? There's a great book called QBQ, The Question Behind the Question. And in that book, there's something, the one takeaway that I had was that you're either asking solving questions or blaming questions. And so I want you to start thinking about what kind of questions are you asking in a conversation, any conversation. Again, we're using our words typically to convince people that we're right, to assert our power. We think that's what power is that I'm going to make you see, think, hear, acknowledge that I'm right. There's your need. See, you have this need for someone to agree with you. Well, how about if you used your words to understand, to query, to get into someone's head, to understand why they think the way they do, and possibly to then be able to help them understand why you think the way you do. So what kind of questions do you ask when you're having a conversation with anybody? Typically, a blaming question, we'll use a work example. So you're at work and something happens. Who did this? Who did this? Well, there's a witch hunt getting ready to start. What if you said, oh my, what happened here? It isn't about blame. Instead of saying, oh, why does this always happen? Why do you always make these mistakes? Why does this always happen to me? What if you were to say, how can I make sure this doesn't happen again? How can we make sure this doesn't happen again? If you're having a conversation with someone and you don't understand how could they possibly believe that? How could they possibly think that that's true? What if you were to say, help me understand how you got to that conclusion. Will you walk me through your logic? Will you walk me through what steps did you take to come to that conclusion? And be serious and seriously curious about that. I am so curious about why people think the way they think, why they believe what they believe. And if you were to just ask better questions, help me understand. Oh, so what was behind this? What led up to this? Not what were you thinking? Because again, there's a blaming question. Help me understand the logic that you use to arrive at this conclusion. Ask better questions. It'll get you to a point where you have much richer conversations. So here's the thing, and this is where we're going to get into some very specific things. And I want to keep reminding you that emotional intelligence plays a huge role in effective, powerful communication. It also helps you choose your words better because you're choosing them from a place of love. You're choosing them from a place of wanting to have clarity. You're choosing them from a place to establish understanding, not to hurt, not to wound, not to destroy, not to overpower, none of that. And so moving from raw to refined really requires the very first step is that you have emotional intelligence and that you're communicating to gain clarity, you're communicating to connect, you're communicating to understand. So the first thing is, and I want to give you some very specific examples. The first thing is get more information before you label something, before you make a statement. And again, I have to say, here's a tip, 3A, right? If you get into a conversation, either in person or digitally, and someone starts off with labels, exit the conversation as gracefully as possible, because that person is probably emotionally charged. So again, depending on political views or religious views, oh, those crazy religious nuts, or oh, those stupid atheists, or oh, those left wing or right wing, or, whatever names are being bandied about right now. If you enter into a conversation and the first thing that starts coming out of the other person's mouth are labels, they're out of control already. And so let me just say, back away from that conversation, unless the dynamics of exceptions are not worth the time it would take me to explain it to you. So all I can say is if they start bandying labels, walk away. So the first thing is to get more information. So how does this play out in a words mean things conversation? Your temptation may be to say to somebody, well, that's never going to work. God, if I had $1 for every time I've heard that from a client or from someone on Facebook, well, that's just not going to work. We've tried that before. Just fill in the blank with that's never going to work, however you may have heard that or said it. But what if you or the other person, you could get to the point where you're saying things like, I don't have enough information to get fully behind that idea, and I'd love to know what your logic is behind how that would work. Can you tell me more about what you're thinking? Now, just pause for a moment and let's go back to the conversation about mindlessness and mindfulness. It takes effort to have a mindful conversation. It takes effort to use your words. It takes effort, energy, conscious thought, emotional intelligence. You have to put, some work into it. And this is where we go back to your need. If your need is to lash out, if your need is to vent, if your need is to hurt, if your need is to show them how stupid they are, there are no amount of tips that I can give you that are going to help you until you can acknowledge and control your need. If those are your needs entering into a conversation, then you're really not interested in a healthy conversation. So just remember that. So the first thing is get more information. Instead of saying that's a stupid idea, or we've tried that before, or that's never going to work, ask better questions. All right. The second thing is to correct any assumptions. Dear sweet baby Jesus, honestly, if you read through some of the threads politically, of course, right now, all the assumptions, right? Or let's imagine in a work environment, you're feeling a certain thing about a coworker and you say to them, well, you're just trying to keep me out of the loop, or you're trying to go over my head, or we're inferring motive and intent, and we have no idea what's going on in the other person's head, heart, life. And so correct your assumptions. First of all, try not to make it. Mindfulness asks you to observe without judgment. So in a perfect world, you're not going to be making assumptions. But as you learn to control yourself, you will find, as I do, you still struggle with making assumptions. And so recognize that you may have made some assumptions and ask for clarity. And that may be, your actions or what you just said is sending me a message that you think I'm stupid, or that you don't think I should be involved on this project, or the choices that you're making are sending the message that you don't think I can handle this, or fill in the blank and say to the person, what you said is sending me the message. I'm reading it as if you are saying or meaning or thinking this. Is that correct? If they clarify and say, yes, I think you're a stupid idiot, well, okay, you have a couple choices, walk away. Or if in a work environment, you might want to say, well, help me understand how you got there. Or, well, that's going to be problematic while we work together. How can we overcome that? The point of it is that you have to step away from your assumptions of what the other people mean, what they're thinking. Oh, they hate me, or oh, they whatever. And you also have to stop making these broad statements and assumptions about other people. Not every Republican is a devil worshiper, and not every, Democrat is crazy, whatever. I mean, we have compartmentalized the world, and every topic in this bifurcated either or, right? It's almost like we've forgotten how to use our words and forgotten how to use critical thinking and forgotten how to use logic to recognize that there is a stream of events, that there is a plethora of dynamics that go into every situation. And so by all this labeling and all this bifurcating of good, bad, we have really eliminated opportunities for us to gain clarity, get more information, correct any assumptions, and then clarify. I will tell you, every single time that I have screwed up in a conversation, it's because I didn't clarify what the other person has said, or what I think the other person meant, or the backstory, or whatever. Again, it will never hurt you to ask for clarity before you share your thoughts. It will never hurt you to make sure that you fully understand something before you start puking your opinion on people, or, well, you oughta, and you know what I would do, and we'll get to that in a minute. So clarify what you think the other person has said, or what you think the other person meant. It's a powerful tool, and it's a way to use your words to make sure that you have an understanding of what the other person is meaning. So as I wrap this up and give you the opportunity to ask specific questions, I want you to keep asking yourself, what's the point? What is my need? What am I after? Are you being a difficult person? Are you being the person who's hogging a conversation? Are you being a person who's not listening to other people? Are you being someone who is, in many cases, perhaps aggravating a conversation by not listening and not letting people get their words out? Your words have power. How are you using those words? Are you structuring your sentences in a way where you're trying to gain clarity, or are you structuring your sentences in a way to give zingers all the time? You're going to be wanting to hurt people all the time. I want you to also remember the value of centering yourself and coming from a place of love and service and calmness and compassion. And again, we enter into conversations with they need to change and they need to understand and they're wrong. Well, it's never, first of all, to the best of my knowledge, no one has ever changed their mind based on an argument on social media. But what if you could be an agent of change to help clarify, connect, extend compassion, offer grace, listen, learn, instead of trying to change your ideas or change other people and force your ideas on other people? What if you were to understand them better so that you came from a place that was more powerful because you now have a better understanding? And then more than anything, it's great to use your words. It's great to be an effective communicator, but there are just times when the other person does not want to have a meaningful conversation. Their need is to be in an echo chamber. Their need is to hurt. Their need is to control. You may not be able to change that. And so I think a lot of times we enter into fruitless conversations. We spend a lot of emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual energy in conversations that have no point, and you're hemorrhaging your life energy out on something that has no point. That's why I want you to keep asking yourself, what's the point of this conversation? What is the point of this conversation? Have more meaningful, thoughtful, powerful, deep, impactful conversations, and fewer of these mindless, emotionally charged, rabbit hole, bottomless pit, hate-mongering conversations. I love having y'all watch these videos. I know your messages tell me that these are helping you. What you can do to help me is to share these videos. I think that I probably don't ask often enough, and so I want to be super clear that I was led by my angels and spirit guides to do this video series and to do it for free and to make it available for as many people as want to watch it. And that it was important for people to be able to connect with their purpose, to be able to retake their personal power, to become mentally, emotionally, and spiritually powerful. And I can't do that without you. So please be sure to share. Please be sure to let your friends who may be struggling know about this series and see if there are topics that are helpful for them. I want to say hello. Let's see who's on. I want to say hello to Tony and to Natalie and Trish Zaytoon. And I'm just grateful. And I just want y'all to know how grateful I am. And until we get together again, my dear friends, you have been synced.